Every day, thousands of aspirants read the newspaper. But there's this real question. Are you reading it the way UPSC wants you to? Welcome back to Can UPSC Ask This? The series where we don't just discuss current affairs, we decode the concepts hidden behind them. And yes, we'll discuss the answers to the previous episode's question at the end of today's video. So stay till the end and see how many you actually got right. Now, without wasting any time, let's begin with today's first topic. News number 1. With reference to vaccines, consider the following statements. Live attenuated vaccines contain weakened forms of pathogen capable of eliciting an immune response. A tetravalent vaccine is designed to provide protection against 4 different strains of serotypes of a pathogen. Live attenuated vaccines always require prior screening of individuals before administration. Which of the statements given above is or are correct? Don't answer yet. Let's first understand why this topic has suddenly become important. The explanation. India has approved its first dengue vaccine called QDENGA for people between 4 and 60 years of age. Now, if you're preparing for UPSC or OPSC or any other exams, do not focus on the brand name. Focus on the science behind it. The important takeaway is that this is a live attenuated tetravalent vaccine. Let's break that down. First, a live attenuated vaccine. It contains weakened versions. It contains weakened versions of the virus. Understood? Since it closely resembles the natural infection without causing severe disease in healthy individuals, it usually generates a strong and long-lasting immune system or immune response. The second term, tetravalent. What is this? Now, dengue isn't caused by just one virus. It has 4 different serotypes. 4 different serotypes. Okay, a person infected with one serotype, it gains immunity only against that particular serotype. Okay, if they're infected later by another serotype, the chances of severe dengue actually increases because of a phenomenon called antibody dependent enhancement. ADE. Okay. Now, that's why scientists wanted a vaccine capable of protecting against all the 4 serotypes instead of just one. Now, this vaccine also does not require any type of prior screening. Okay? Before administration. Okay, making this vaccination program much easier to implement. Now, let's connect this to UPSC. UPSC has repeatedly asked questions on vaccines, immunity, viruses, and public health programs. The examiner is rarely interested in commercial name of the vaccine. Instead, they ask, what is a live vaccine? What is a vector vaccine? What is a mRNA vaccine? Or how immunity develops after vaccination. That's the concept you should revise. Now, examiner's hint. Whenever a disease appears in the news, do not stop at the disease itself. Revise the causative organism, the mode of transmission, vaccine type, then comes prevention strategies, then national programs, if any. Okay, that's where UPSC usually frames its questions. Now go back and read the question once again. Has your answer changed? Comment your answer below in the format like question number 1, and don't just write the option, tell me why you chose it. We'll discuss the answer at the end of our next episode. Now comes news number 2. With reference to the anti-defection law in India, consider the following statements. The Anti-Defection law was added to the Constitution through the 52nd Constitutional Amendment Act. The decision on the disqualification of a member under the 10th schedule is made by the Election Commission of India. A merger of a political party is exempt from disqualification if at least 2/3 of the members of the legislature party agree to the merger. Which of these statements given above is or are correct? Looks simple? Maybe. But UPSC often hides the trap in just one statement. Let's first understand why the anti-defection law is back in news. There has been renewed debate over whether India's anti-defection law is actually achieving what it was meant to do. But before discussing the debate, let's understand why this law exists in the first place. Imagine you vote a candidate because they belong to a particular political party and support a particular ideology. Now, after winning the election, the representative switches to another party without seeking your opinion. The government changes, the opposition weakens, and suddenly the mandate given by the people starts looking very difficult. This was a common problem in 1960s and 1970s. In fact, the phrase "Aya Ram Gaya Ram" became famous after the frequent political defections by elected representatives. To address this, Parliament introduced anti-defection law through the 52nd Constitutional Amendment Act 1985 by inserting the 10th schedule. Okay. Now, its main objective was simple. It was to promote political stability and discourage legislators from changing parties for a personal or a political gain. Now, here's an important point for your exam. Many students remember the 10th schedule but forget who decides the disqualification. It is not the Election Commission. I repeat, it is not the Election Commission. The decision is taken by the Speaker of Lok Sabha or the Speaker of the State Legislative Assembly, depending on the house concerned. However, this is exactly where the controversy begins. Since the speaker usually belongs to a political party, questions are often raised about whether these decisions remain completely impartial. Another important development came in 2003. Okay. Now, originally, if one-third of the members of a party split away, they could avoid this disqualification. But this provision was widely misused. So 91st Constitutional Amendment Act removed this exception. Okay. Now today, only a merger supported by at least 2/3 of the members of the legislative party is protected from disqualification. Very important. This is very important. That's the law as it stands today. Now, experts are debating whether even stronger reforms are needed. Some have suggested that if a legislator voluntarily leaves the party on whose ticket they were elected, they should automatically lose their seat and seek a fresh mandate from the voters. Whether that proposal is accepted or not is a matter of public debate. But for UPSC, the real focus remains the constitutional provisions, the purpose of the law, and its practical challenges. That's what you should remember. Now, I would give you an examiner's hint. Whenever any constitutional amendment is in news, do not just memorize only the amendment number. Always memorize why it was introduced, which article or schedule was affected, what changed before and after the amendment. Has the Supreme Court interpreted it any important judgment? That's how UPSC links current affairs with polity. Now go back to the question and read once again. Can you identify the incorrect statement? Comment your answers in this format. Question number 2, and don't just tell me the option. Tell me why you rejected the other choices. We'll discuss the correct answer and the examiner's trap at the end of the next episode. Now let's move to today's final story. News number 3. With reference to capital gains tax in India, consider the following statements. Long-term capital gains tax is levied only when a capital asset is sold after being held for a specified minimum period. Government securities or GSECs are debt instruments issued by the government to borrow money from the public. Foreign portfolio investors can invest only in government securities and not in the Indian equity market. Which of the statements given above is or are correct? At first glance, this looks like a taxation question, but do not be fooled. It's actually testing your understanding of financial markets, government borrowings, and different types of investors. So let's get to the explanation part. Why is this topic in the news? Recently, the finance minister clarified that there is no proposal to remove the long-term capital gains tax on equity investments for domestic investors. Many people immediately assumed that taxes had been changed, but that's not what happened. The government clarified that existing LTCG tax on listed equities will continue. What changed was the treatment for certain foreign portfolio investors investing in government securities. Okay, now instead of remembering the tax rates, let's understand the concepts. First, what is a capital gain? Imagine you buy shares of a company today and sell them after some time at a higher price. Okay, the profit you earn is known as the capital gain. Okay, now if the asset is held for a period prescribed under tax law before selling, it becomes a long-term capital gain. Basically, it's like 12 months for listed shares, equity, mutual funds, and more than 24 months for real estate, unlisted shares, and more than 36 months if it is in debt mutual funds, gold. On the other hand, short-term capital gains, if sold earlier than 12 months, then it may attract this short-term capital gains tax instead. The holding period depends on the type of asset. That's why UPSC is more interested in concept than the exact numbers. Now let's understand the government securities. So whenever Government of India needs money for infrastructure or welfare schemes, or you can say other expenditures, it does not only rely on taxes, it also borrows. One of the safest ways it borrows is by issuing the government securities, commonly known as the GSECs. Okay, now when you buy a GSEC, you are essentially lending money to the government. In return, government promises to give you some kind of interest on that. Okay, they will pay you the principal along with some interest. Because these are backed by the sovereign, they're generally considered among the safest financial instruments. Now comes another important term, that is the portfolio investors, foreign portfolio investors, or the FPIs. Let's understand them. Now, FPIs are foreign individuals. Remember this, foreign individuals or institutions that invest in Indian financial markets. Indian financial market. Okay, they can invest in equity shares, corporate bonds, and government securities. Unlike the foreign direct investment, FDIs, they seek management control over the companies, but FPIs do not. Their investment are primarily financial in nature. Okay, now that's why FPIs are often called the hot money. Hot money, because they can enter and leave markets relatively quicker depending on the global economic conditions. So today's news isn't really about one tax announcement. It's about understanding the difference between domestic investors and foreign investors, the role of the government securities, and how tax policy can influence investment flows into the economy. And that's exactly the kind of integrated thinking UPSC expects. Now I'd like to give you the examiner's hint. Whenever taxation appears in the news, do not memorize the tax rates. Instead, revise the direct tax versus indirect tax. Okay, capital gains, FDIs, FPIs, and government securities, bonds, treasury bills, sovereign borrowings. UPSC usually tests the underlying financial concepts rather than the latest budget announcement. Now go back to the question and read it once again. Can you identify which statement is incorrect? Comment your answers in the format I have told you earlier. Now we'll discuss the answers at the end of the next episode and see whether you thought like an examiner. Now here comes the previous episode's solutions. First question was, with reference to the removal of judges in India, consider the following statements. Let's see. Parliament can freely discuss the conduct of a Supreme Court or High Court judge at any time. No, this is wrong. As we had studied, it was due to Article 121. They cannot discuss it in the Parliament. Okay, so this option becomes incorrect. Let's see. This becomes incorrect. This is incorrect. Now, a judge of the Supreme Court or High Court can be removed only on the grounds of proved misbehavior and incapacity. Correct. This is correct. The procedure relating to the investigation of allegations against judges is governed by the Judges Enquiry Act 1968. This is also correct. So option becomes B. 2 and 3 are correct. Got it? Let's move on to the next question. Question number 2. With reference to the Niti Aayog, consider the following statements. It is a constitutional body established through a constitutional amendment. No, this isn't a constitutional body. It came into existence by our executive resolution. Okay, it is not a constitutional body. It's not a statutory body. Okay, it's not a statutory body. So statement 1 is incorrect. Let's remove them. It serves as the Government of India's premier public policy think tank. Yes, it's correct. One of the objectives is to promote cooperative federalism by involving states in the policy making process. Definitely correct. So option is D. 2 and 3 are correct. Let's move on to the next question. With reference to inflation in India, consider the following statements. A deficient monsoon can contribute to inflation by reducing agricultural input. Exactly, it's correct. An increase in international crude oil prices can lead to higher inflation even if domestic demand remains unchanged. We discussed this in the earlier video, so it's definitely correct. The primary objective of the Monetary Policy Committee (MPC) is to maintain the inflation around the target set by the government. Yes, RBI and government they set a target, and the Monetary Policy Committee, its primary objective is to maintain that inflation rate. So it's correct. All 3 are correct. Option D. So that's all for today's episode of Can UPSC Ask This? Today we explored 3 important topics. India's first dengue vaccine and the science behind the vaccination, the anti-defection law and its constitutional framework, and finally capital gains tax, FPIs and government securities. If you enjoyed learning current affairs this way, make sure you subscribe to Vidyarthee Education. And before you leave, do not forget to comment your answers to all the questions I asked in this video. In our next episode, we'll reveal all the correct answers, explain the examiner's traps hidden in each question, and bring you 3 more important current affairs that matters for UPSC. Until then, keep reading, keep questioning, and remember, UPSC does not test how much news you read, it tests how well you understand the concepts behind it. So that's it for today's video. Keep learning and stay curious.